This morning I've come for my walk in a different type of environment. I've come this morning to walk along the seashore, and I've chosen a bay in Chaguaramas that has many names. Some people call it Hart Bay, others call it Anchorage Bay. But if you look on a map, what you'll see is this is simply part of the wider St. Peter's Bay. But I'll talk a little more about the significance of each of those names as we go along on the walk. I just like having different things to do. And I like having a certain amount of variety in the various things that I do. And the other day, I saw something that explained the benefit of having that variety in life, particularly as you get older. I saw something on the internet that said that when you're young, say at 10 and 12, you have only lived a small portion of your life, and that everything that you see and experience is new to you. There's novelty in it. And so the brain is constantly getting new input, getting new things all the time. And so it keeps the brain active. And then you get older with work and children and other family matters. And you end up in a routine. And after a while, there's nothing new. You're into all these various routines. And because of that, time seems to fly fast. And it flies fast because, well, you're doing the same things over and over and over. And when something new happens, well, that's, the brain now registers that new item. As you get older, if you incorporate new things and novelty into your life, it keeps your brain active. And so it seems as if time isn't passing as fast. First time I'd ever heard that. Sounds good to me and fits in with my philosophy of always looking for something new. Let me show you the bay as I walk along. Plenty kobo this morning, but they're not bothering me. Thought I'd get some breeze off of the ocean, but I'm not getting that. Rather still this morning. In fact, no breeze whatsoever this morning. And every so often there's a car passing. When I walk the other parts of Chaguaramas, I don't have to think about the cars or worry about them. So I kind of prefer that. Although, I mean, the Chaguaramas Development Authority has made this very nice walkway so that I'm not literally having to look over my shoulder for cars coming up on me. But it's still nicer to be walking and not hearing cars whizzing past. So I'm not sure if I'll put this area into my regular walking schedule. I'm not sure. I shouldn't say I'm not sure. I don't like the idea of constantly hearing the cars whizzing past me. But I'm here this morning, so I'm doing the walk here this morning. This bay is a popular bay for people who like fishing. And on our weekend, you always see people in every one of these little cutouts between the trees. You always see people fishing. I had an interesting episode here once. I can't remember if it was 3 of us or 4 of us came, said we're going fishing. I think it was 3 of us. And 2 of us immediately put lines in the water. While the 3rd guy said, nah, he doesn't feel to go fishing. So we left him sitting in the car trunk. And as is normal with us, we walk with some alcohol to lubricate ourselves in between. So we're there fishing and fishing, but not catching anything. He's just sitting quietly in the car trunk. Eventually, he said, look, we're not catching anything. Let's take a break and have something to drink. So we go to the car trunk and we say to him, okay, pass the rum. He says, what rum? I said, well, we left a bottle of rum here in the car trunk. He said, that's finished. I said, how could that be finished? When we looked, he had been sitting quietly in the car trunk and drinking out the rum and emptied the bottle. We looked at him and he then just got up and said, y'all are joke fishermen. So I mean, we're joke fishermen. So give me one of the lines. So we handed him one of the fishing lines. He walked out to the edge. I think it was this spot. I believe it was like this exact spot. Threw the line in the water. And I kid you not, in less than a minute, had hooked a fish and pulled it in. Threw the fish on the bank and said, told you, you fellas are joke fishermen. Anyhow, just one of the humorous things that happened in my life. I had said that this is a bay with many names. And one of the names that people call here is Anchorage Bay. And I believe that the reason for the name is because of that building we see across there. Let me walk across and see if I can get it better for you to see. Yep. That building over there, popularly known as Anchorage. Over the years, they've added on to the side and given the sides other names. But Anchorage was a very popular restaurant when it first opened. And I remember going there several times to have dinner. And one of the highlights of the dinner was coming to the water's edge and throwing breadcrumbs into the water and seeing the fish swim up to eat the breadcrumbs. And over time, also became very popular as a fetting venue. Where are you going to fet? Down by Anchorage this weekend. And I think as a result of that, people began calling it Anchorage Bay. And the name has stuck. They stopped operating as a restaurant, but they do operate now as a special events venue. In fact, recently I went to a wedding that was held there. Very nice wedding, very nice site. So that's I should say, the reason why some people call here Anchorage Bay. Also want to point out something else. Let me see if I can zoom in. Yeah. Those boats you see across there, not the yacht in the foreground, but the boats in the distance. Right there is a Coast Guard base. They really use it more for storage of vehicles. The main Coast Guard base being further into the peninsula at Stobbles Bay. A lot of people, my friends included, insist that that was the site of submarine pens during World War II. And they say that because this bay, as you get out into it, is very deep, has great depth. All over there where you're seeing those boats, water's very deep. And they insist that the US used it as a submarine pens because the submarines could come into the bay, come around that point, remaining submerged underwater where you couldn't see them. And only when you get up into, well, let's say the base area, they would then rise up out of the water. And they insist that that was where the US kept the submarines that were based for work around Trinidad and in the Southern Caribbean. I have researched and researched and can find no evidence that that was ever a submarine base. But it was used by the US Navy during World War II. And what I found is that it was a small boats repair facility. Not repairing small local fishing boats, but repairing small boats owned by the US Navy for repairing their patrol craft. And so some people call that area small boats. And I think they're more accurate in their name because the research that I have done indicates that that is what that was used for. All right. Let me continue my walk. Oops. Having a little difficulty taking this. All right. So we continue the walk. Back on the walkway. One of the names that this bay is also known as is Hart Bay. The reason for that is that back in the 1800s, there were a lot of fishing villages in the Chaguaramas Peninsula. Almost every little bay had a fishing village or was used by the fishermen. And those fishermen back in the 1800s would row their boats from Chaguaramas to Port of Spain to sell their fish and back. Well, that's an arduous task and made more difficult by the fact that they would have to row around this point to get to Port of Spain, which you can just make out there in the distance. And so in 1854, 1855, Daniel Hart, who was the superintendent of prisons in charge of Carrera Prison, got the idea to cut a channel bisecting this area. And he completed that channel in 1856. Now he used convicts, prisoners from Carrera Island to cut that channel, bisecting this area. Channel was, I believe, 4 feet deep, 15 feet wide, and he said it ran for about 2,156 feet. And it allowed fishermen to row into here and then cut across the channel and into the next bay and continue home, or vice versa in coming to Port of Spain. He said that cutting that channel saved the fishermen approximately 1 hour of rowing. The channel was used continuously, mainly at high tide, when it filled all the way to its full height. But then in 1941, when the U.S. Army took over Chaguaramas, that was the end of using this channel, because nobody outside of U.S. Army personnel were allowed in Chaguaramas. When the Chaguaramas was finally returned to Trinidad sovereignty, well, the channel hadn't been maintained, had been silted up, and it was decided to fill it in. And I think part of the reason as well would have been that, well, by then we were more into, in the late 60s, now into power engines, much less rowing. And so in 1966, the channel was filled in, and that was the end of Hart's Cut. Well, it was called Hart's Cut because, as I said, Daniel Hart was the one who had the idea, and he had cut across this area. And as a result, some people call this area Hart's Cut. Never found exactly where the cut was, but I have a rough idea. I may show you in a little bit as I walk down and get close to the area. I know that is not over there when they cut through that height. So it will be where it's flatter. Yeah, boy. I really am having to deal with all these cars that are flying by. I mean, can't be angry about it. People heading to work because there are all these marinas down in Chaguaramas. Men heading off to work, restaurants, hotels, all of that is in Chaguaramas. So there are people on their way to work. Not to mention Army and Coast Guard personnel who are heading to report in. So, can't be angry about it. But I do prefer taking my walk in quieter areas. So I'm swinging in here at the road that leads to Anchorage and the Coast Guard base. And as I said, I'm going to show you where I think the Hart Cut channel was. And folks, this is where I think Hart Cut channel was. This flattened area here that is now used for car parking. I think this is where the channel was. It would not have been up where the land was high, obviously. You would have picked the flattest area, easiest to cut through, least amount of work. So I think this is where it was. I'm going to walk in here. Part of the way is the the entrance for Anchorage, and a little further on is the entrance for the Coast Guard base. And then off to the right is the start of the trail that people use to get up to two nice small bays for fishing. So I'll at least walk up and show you the start of the trail. At least in here, I'm away from the sound of the cars a little bit. So here's the beginning of the trail that people use to get up to those bays just opposite Anchorage and what they call here now, Rockback. One time it was Tsunami. They keep changing the name. But trail leads up and you climb it, and then you come down in some bays over on that side. At the top, there's a very nice view of Carrera Island. Well, I can't really go any further along here. That's the gate for the Coast Guard base, what they're calling Hart base. Have to turn back at this point. I hope you enjoyed this short walk, and I hope I was able to fill in and give you some information on this bay. If you like the video, please click the like button, and if you think there are people who would enjoy hearing it, by all means, please share the video. And if you're interested in seeing other videos that I've produced, click one of the two videos that will be appearing on your screen now. Bye for now.